I'm in Florida and like work for a bit. So I was kind of a backpack forward.
All right, so it is 6 p.m., so I'll call this meeting to order. We'll start off with the pledge and mindfulness moment. I do want to say that there was a mistake I made. 5 should be actually after the pledge. So, but that being said, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and now we'll take a mindfulness moment. All right, moving on to additions and deletions, which is technically number 5, but we're taking out of order. A change to the agenda is we're going to push up 8.4 and 8.5, take that out of order and make that right before number 4. Did everybody understand that?
8.4 and 8.5, you said?
Yeah, we're going to do that because it's a pretty quick one. We'll do that right before the board education.
Great.
All right. So before we do that, I do want to remind people that there's a 2-minute limit on public comment. Garrett is really awesome and he watches the time for me and lets me know when the 2 minutes are up. So I ask folks that they do keep that in mind, and Garrett's really good at letting folks know when it's time. I also want to give folks a head up on 4.1. That's the board education, and it's not an action item. Therefore, as per policy A21, public participation in board meetings, since there's no action and there's no action on it, there will be no public comment on that because it's board education. We've done that before. I do want to let folks know that Melody is going to be doing a public forum community event where folks can ask questions. And as always, if you do have questions about it, you can email the superintendent, Joanne Canning. So with that, we're going to go around the room and just introduce everybody first. We'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Ann Campbell.
Emily Wheeler-Reynolds.
Garrett Grant.
Juliana Ceccanelli. Michael Booton.
Joanne Canning. Catherine Whalen.
Jeff Eddy.
And I believe we have Jackie. Jackie Wheeler is online. I think she's coming here, so she might not be able to unmute. We also have staff in the building, and I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. We'll start with Jamie.
Jamie Evans, Facilities Director.
Emily Frank, Director of Special Services.
And we do have a special guest, Megan.
Dr. Megan Roy.
Dr. Megan Roy, sorry. All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Motion by Giuliano. Is there a second? Seconded by Ian. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. Technically being remote, I'm supposed to go around the room. Ian?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Juliana? Aye. Catherine?
Yes.
Jeff? And Jackie?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to 8.4, this is the annual fuel and propane wood chip contract approval. The proper motion would be to enter into a contract with Irving for fuel and propane and Kuzene Forest Products for wood chip services. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Giuliano. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? from the board? Public comment? Emily?
Did we skip number 3?
Oh, we did.
I'm sorry, you
good
were on a
catch.
roll.
I know. I'm so sorry. We can.
We're there.
We're there, so we might as well do it. We'll go back to the public comment. Thank you, Emily. All right, so no public comment. This is for the wood chips.
Oh, no,
Nope.
definitely not anything about the
Wood chips and fuel, sorry. Okay, we'll go back to public comment. I made a mistake. All right, no further discussion. All those in favor, moving around the table. Ian?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Juliana? Aye. Catherine?
Aye.
Jeff? Jackie?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to 8.5, and we'll, like I said, we'll circle back to comments. This is the snow removal contract. Motion to enter into contract with Bellavance Land Works and Hauling for snow removal. It was the only bidder, unfortunately. Is there a motion? Motion by Jeff. Is there a second? Second by Ian. Discussion? Public comment? Oh,
Do we have any way of finding out what the other reason for the holdup on the other bids might have been?
Sorry,
Jamie.
She asked what the holdup on other bids, like how we find out what the holdup was.
There was no holdup. The other folks didn't put in any bids.
Because some of them said they were unavailable at this time, which made it sound like maybe it was just a timing thing.
No, it came down to a manpower, labor issue. That's what they were referring to when they said they weren't able to bid at this time.
That contract came in like quite a bit over last year
Yeah.
as well, and I just feel like it might be nice to try one more time.
Share a little context about it. The prior contractor that we had for the last 6-7 years, for several years, they did not increase their pricing, which meant by law, we weren't required to bid. They kept their price the same. If we had put out the bid, we would have gone higher, and they kept their price at the same, so we didn't have to, we weren't obligated, and you wouldn't want to put out a bid to get a higher price. So we went several years with that method. Then we got to the point where they were saying they weren't interested in wanting to bid, they may not bid again on the project, the service. So then we had to put it out to bid. And you can see all the people that we invited to bid on it, whatever the reasons were, they didn't have the manpower, they chose not to, whatever the case is. We did our due diligence to put it out for bid. These are all folk we invited. They didn't put it in bid. Here we are. There's only so many contractors, in this area. All else I can say about it.
That makes sense. That's unfortunate, though. Any other questions? All right, no public comment. Lindsay?
I was just wondering if you had looked at the state contract to see, like, I didn't know if you did the math. Like, it's worded different than yours. It's like a big price. Theirs is more like by the hour. But if any comparison had been done to see if that would be a cheaper option, because Bellavance actually has a state contract. Sorry, I'm at football practice.
I don't know if we can't do that if we put it out to bid.
Right.
It's what we get for bids.
But you can leverage the state contracts without going out to bid.
But we did go out to bid, and I think that's where the rub is on that, is that we can't. Yeah. All right.
One more.
Cassandra? Oh, yeah, thank you.
Hi, is this still like the open public comment time?
No, we're talking about the snow removal contract.
Okay, sorry, never mind.
We'll go back to public comment very shortly.
Okay.
All right. No further public comment on snow removal. We'll vote it. Going around. Ian?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Garrett?
Aye.
Giuliano? Catherine?
No.
Jeff? And Jackie?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to public comment, and this is for comments for items that are not on the agenda. I will put it out there for people in the public that would like to speak. Cassandra, since you had your hand up, I'll let you go first.
Thanks. So I had been looking at the previous meeting minutes because I haven't been able to make one yet. And I'd noticed in August that there was something mentioned about the arts programs. And I noticed that Ms. Koenig had said something about the equity in time for arts is being considered. With that, I would like to vouch for the students with special needs. As a parent that's been advocating for this for a few years, my daughter takes APE as well as regular PE with her classmates. What has not been done yet is an adaptive music class or an adaptive art class. Art is just as important to her as APE, if not more important. She loves music. She loves to sing. She loves to dance. She loves to play with instruments. She cannot access the current music curriculum for the middle school, as well as many of her peers currently. It's just not an equitable opportunity for her and students like her. She's a Barrytown student. That and the arts for the middle schoolers is typically with Design Lab, or it's digital. That's not something that they can access either. So there's not a time for them to have free art or creating. That's an equitable opportunity that they have. So when we're thinking about building curriculums for them that are equitable, that's not something that's often considered. And I'd like to voice that be something that's considered.
Great, and Joanne has noted that. Thank you very much. Moving on to Mr. Watkins.
Yeah,
Sorry that you were the one that had your hand up first.
you're fine. And point of clarification, do we get additional time to finish up our thoughts if we ask for reasonable accommodation and other people have already gone that want to comment about whatever?
So why don't you, we try to ask that you self-limit to 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm going to try. Yeah.
Okay.
I have my all right. Just a little backstory. This is my daughter, by the way. My wife is over there. I grew up as a person on the spectrum that got services that was in the music program and of course only went through public school. And that got me to perform at the White House, at NATO headquarters, in presidential parades, and for the inaugurations for around our town and the states and competitions. I did all that through public school, got through college with that too. I've already gone over so many different facts. I'm not going to repeat things that I've already said because you already know. Critical thinking, problem solving, self-esteem, so many other things. Like music is one of the few courses that has an effect and teaches skills that can be used in almost every other classroom. And you're about to read reports about special ed students, Berry City Elementary, 48% are economically disadvantaged and 32% are on an IEP. And you want to cut 25% of their time out from the kids that are most disadvantaged. Folks, this goes against everything that you've even published. You could see this if board members went in to observe these practices and rehearsals and see the students. But wait, under the rescinded policy section of the board's website, you took that away, that policy. Why would you do that? How can you run a business without seeing it? time equals money and money equals time. So if you're gonna take out 25%, a large chunk of time out of people's practices and rehearsals, when the city's already voted on a budget based off of whatever amount of time and resources those teachers need. I don't see how such a large cut, it's not like, oh, 5 minutes here or something like that. No one was consulted. Like, we need to work together to advocate for these kids and explain to other teachers. Not even all the teachers hand out the forms to offer kids the band or course, because there's that much tug of war between the, I hate to say it, two sides, but I went through public school and did amazing things with music. My daughter, she does the same. So I would appreciate it if we didn't have to keep coming back as musicians and fighting for every single minute we deserve and these kids deserve. This has an effect on real people, real people. It's disappointing. These are the kids. I want you to look at them. You know that half of those kids have plans and IEPs or 504s. And those are the kids that are going to be taken advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. All right. Anyone else here for public comment before I go to student voice? Rachel? Not sure what happened. I thought she had her hand up.
She did have her hand up. I was on mute. How many times have I done this? I apologize. I forgot to unmute. I just want to say thank you to the board, to those who are speaking tonight, to those who just spoke, and really urge the community to stay involved and stay informed about what's happening at our schools. And I think about the amazing opportunities, and I worry about budget season coming up. We've got time, but I urge the community to stay involved early on in the budget season, attend the finance meetings. I think about our special education. We have some significant staff shortages there. And I just want to implore everyone before we get into budget season, just get involved, see what's happening, and learn more about our great programs and services. And I hope that we can have fully funded schools in Barry. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
I just have two questions. First of all, we're not discussing anything on number 4, am I correct?
Correct.
So asking questions in public commentary about a report is probably not the proper.
The proper place to do that would be the meeting or the community event that is being scheduled with Melody.
Okay, so my concern was asking a couple of questions about the board report, but that's only 4, and we don't want any public feedback on that. It's going to be somewhere.
That's under board training. So yeah, you would want to bring your questions either via email or to Melody at that meeting.
Okay. And then the second thing is, when will we be getting into the preliminary part of the actual budgetary process for this district? I asked that question in light of what's happening with the CBCC and what that ramification will be on this district and every district if that should pass.
This is a discussion.
Yeah. Joanne will reach out to you to let you know the timeline on that.
Paul, our budget season will begin with the board in November. I have already started working with administrators. I do want to mention, I was going to mention at the end of the meeting, but I'll mention now, if the CVCC project goes through, that will not affect taxpayers for 2 years. That will not affect our budget building process in this next year. More information will be coming though. Thank you for the question.
All right. Any other public comment before we move on to student voice?
Yes, hi,
Oh.
I'm Megan Provost. I'm a parent of one of the students at the school. And I noticed when I'm going into the school, the principals are at the front desk. And they're telling me that the administrative secretary there has been cut. So I'm trying to figure out how to go about advocating for the principals to get a secretary at Berrytown School. Because I don't believe that they have the time to take care of the students, take care of the school, and also be at the front desk, manning the doorway, you know, taking phone calls. It's just a lot on their plates, and I feel like we're asking a lot of them, going above and beyond what their main criteria is at this point.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? It looks like, is that Garrett White?
No. Oh, yes, okay. Oops.
Yeah, I can speak now. Thanks for y'all's hard work, and I appreciate the chance to speak. My name is Garrett White. I work as a behavior interventionist at the Berry City Elementary Middle School. I'm an advocate for the arts. In briefest summary, my dad had taught at the Berry City and Berry Town Elementary Middle Schools for many years. Currently at Berry City, I'm a little troubled by the reduction of group and practice time from 40 minutes to 30 minutes. I know that would impact students who have in families who have less money to throw around. Families that can't afford private lessons would feel perhaps limited or constrained by these shorter practice times, let alone that 30 minutes is reduced to 20 ideally when a student gets there or puts their bag down or gets settled. So it's really not ideal to shorten those practice times. And even currently now, these music blocks are during Explorer and specials periods, such as your arts block or your design labs, and even some outdoor activity blocks. So it feels like there's a disincentive to join band or chorus or these arts programs where it feels like the arts are kind of in competition with each other. And in that way, more expendable than more of the traditional core academic classes. And it's sad to me thinking that for some of these students, band and chorus is something that they're very enthusiastic about and they feel very driven to be a part of. So seeing it kind of decreased, if we want students to be engaged and enthusiastic about their education, why limit what maybe gives them a reason or an enthusiasm to be a part of the school day? Finishing up here, just also to promote that at these school concert events, this is the only time I see students doing public speaking. At some of the concerts for the middle school, every song was introduced by a middle school student reading in front of the crowd. And I was, as someone who has struggled with public speaking, I saw it as a wonderful gift for students to practice speaking in front of a large group of people. And also, of course, public engagement at these concerts and in the public square. If we want the same level of performance and even better at these concerts and parades, then why not invest more time in the arts programs? And lastly, I'm just going to add that it's strange to me that the band groups are grouped by age, such as all 7th, 8th graders together, and not grouped by ability. There are some 6th graders that perhaps can perform with the 8th graders. So again, thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Garrett. Lindsay, you're not on mute, and it looks like you have your hand up. So if you have a public comment.
Yes, I just wanted to, I agree with Megan's comment. The cut to the receptionist position has definitely been difficult, with answering the door, answering the phones, the new phone system that went into, I think it went into effect the first day of school. So they're getting every call for a parent pickup, and it's like I had to pick up my kids because my son chipped his tooth. I'm like, I'm going to be there to get my kid at this time. And they hadn't even had a chance to contact the teachers yet when I went there to go pick up my kids for the dentist appointment. So I support bringing back the receptionist position. And I was
All
just
right.
curious when we would get a chance to maybe provide comment or interact with the board regarding the special education reports.
So again,
I know
that,
there's the community forum. I get that. I just didn't know about like involvement with the board.
this is going to be a training portion for us. So if it comes up as an agenda item for us to make a discussion and to make a vote on, we will certainly, there will be option for public comment. All right. Are you here for student voice or public comment?
To that, I have a public comment before the student voice section.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, I'm Andy Evans. I am the student body president of Spalding High School. So normally I'd be here as your student voice representative, but right here, I'm here as a member of the community. And specifically, I am the first chair of the percussion section of the Spalding High School band. So for the past 3 years, I've seen freshmen come in from our music programs, right? Progressively knowing less and less about music because they have less time to learn it. And that puts a lot of hardship on Bobby as a teacher. It makes it harder for me to learn as a section leader because I need to help others much more. And I do not see how cutting this time can help any of us with that, and as well as the school spirit that the Spalding High School band fosters. We are out there at 6 p.m., an hour before football games playing. We get there long before other kids at school every single morning. And I see kids who have passions for nothing else in life but music, and they join band, and all of a sudden it fosters this work ethic, and they turn into this, flower of a person, and they help their friends everywhere else. Band is more than just a class or an art. It's like a way that you can find like-minded people and friends. And that helped me get through high school. So I feel like this time cutting down in middle schools of our bands is only going to worsen issues we have with morale in schools, with our pep rallies, with school spirit, even our ability to win football games. So in the end, I do not see how cutting practice time in middle school band can truly help anything. All I can see is cons. And I don't fully understand the reasoning behind why, but it's any good reasons either. So that's my comment as not our student voice representative, but as a person who has done it their whole life and seen many people go through it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We love hearing y'all practice.
So no additional public comment. Is that? Okay. Moving on to student voice. Folks here for student voice. All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Evans, student president of Spalding High School. And this is.
I'm Evelyn. I'm the student body vice president.
So with this meeting being so early in the school year, we haven't had much chance to be around the school and see what's going on as much, especially with all of the events that we have to plan and with homecoming, our first pep rally, and a lot of stuff. But we are observing events around the school and trying out different things. So hopefully by the next school board meeting, we'll have compiled a presentation to bring to you about events inside of the school. But that's what we have here today, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here for student voice?
I'm just getting with my daughter to give her a little spot. She wrote down her own points. I didn't have any saying what she wrote down, just so everyone's like.
Hey guys, I'm Samantha Watkins, 7th grader of Berry City Elementary Middle School BCEMS. And I think music is very important to me because of the time that we had before you guys even thought about cutting it. Anyways, I was really happy with the time of 40 minutes before you cut it off to 20 minutes. Well, yeah, you cut less. But it really is annoying to have it cut down. I mean, like, I have a passion to be a good musician, just like my dad was when he was younger. And I just generally think music is important to me because of my teacher, Miss Sechak, who is the band teacher now. She used to also be the chorus teacher, but there's someone else. And just like the instruments and lessons, like I'm joining modern band for the first time, and I never played the electric guitar. In the time's being cut down, that means less time for me to know how to do it. And in the end, it's just, I think music is important to me because of all of these reasons.
This is coming from someone with a 504 and behavior plan whose band period helped transition her off of an IEP and be independent.
That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else for student voice? And just state your name for the record.
Yep. Hi, everybody. We're the president and vice president of the Turning Point USA chapter at Spalding High School. We just came here to introduce ourselves to you guys. And in case you're unfamiliar, Turning Point USA is it's a youth organization that helps get kids more familiar with like the Constitution and more interested in politics. And we're going to be at a lot more of these types of events, but we're just here to introduce themselves and answer any questions you guys have here after. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. No more student comment. Moving on to 4.1. And I'll
Thank
hand it
you.
over to you.
Please, Megan and Melody, would you join us at the round table, please? Melody is going to introduce Megan and say a couple of words about the presentation this evening. Hopefully the board has had a chance to read the briefing memo, which we gave you the context for why these reports have been submitted. So again, welcome Dr. Megan Roy and Dr. Melody Frank.
You all for having us here. So Dr. Roy, we partnered with her towards the beginning of the fall, reached out as we discussed kind of earlier last year, in service of doing an independent review of our special education department. And as a whole, our schools, when looking through the lens of a multi-tiered system of support, recognizing that special services is at the end of a continuum and trying to better understand the systems that we currently have in our school and where we can leverage opportunities for growth and shifts in those systems so that we can support all of our students at the best level possible and using the best practices pre-K through 12. So we were fortunate that we were able to partner with her, and she has come in and had several interviews, was on site in all of our schools, and has even met already with our special services staff with the report. And so we're excited, and actually met with our principals and leadership team over the course of the summer. So a lot of different steps, but we're excited for her to be with you all today and share her report on what she has found.
Thanks, Melody. Thanks for having me, everyone. Sorry, my back is to some of you. Joanne, are you okay? Are you driving?
I'm driving.
Okay,
You just tell me, Megan.
So thank you for having me. I work at St. Michael's College now in the school leadership program, but most of my career in Vermont has been in school leadership, specifically special ed leadership, and some time as a superintendent. And so I work with school districts who are looking to, as Melody said, look at their practices and provide sort of a bird's eye view. So There's things on the screen that are very small, and I'm not going to try to just read them to you, but you either have access or you'll have access to them. Hopefully what I'll do, it's a big report. I'm going to try to make this part bite-sized. I am available to answer questions, but you also have a timeline and a meeting, so we'll do the best we can. So first, just kind of talking about what the goals were of the review, I think it's really important to understand that this was done proactively to say, you know, we want to look at our system as a whole, and sometimes there's advantages to a bird's eye view from people who are not within the system. So when we sat down to say, what is it we're trying to do, first it was really important to understand the district context and, you know, leadership change and sort of where the system's been, what are the strengths, what are the challenges. Part of the review was to assess the extent to which the practices for special ed in the district align with research-based practices. I'll talk about that a little bit, not a lot, but that was really an important goal. It was to look specifically at the effectiveness of inclusion strategies, which is an evidence-based practice. It's not sort of a philosophy. It's connected to the research. The review also analyzed how resources are allocated here. What does the special education staffing look like in each of the buildings? How do you use it? And what are some recommendations around that? And that really was the goal, is to provide you all with actionable recommendations. And as Melody said, the teams had a chance to unpack things quite a bit. And you'll hear me say this a few different times. A lot of the findings are things that the district is aware of and is working on and has been working on. All right, you go ahead, probably two. So first I'll kind of talk about how I approached the review. Again, I don't want to spend time kind of lecturing you on evidence-based practices in special education, but the reason that I show you, you can go on to the next slide, Joanne, thanks. The reason why I just want to highlight this for you is one of the things that's important for a review like this that looks at the whole system is to understand that special education feels very individualized, because it is. It's designed around an individual student's needs, but there are a set of common practices that are connected to kids doing better, so improving student outcomes. And these are pretty universal across disability category and age group, and that's why they're really important for a review like this, because they're pretty universal. So what you'll see in the findings are things that are related to these four areas. And the areas are collaboration, responsive instruction, expert instruction, both academic and behavioral, and then this idea of intensifying and individualizing intervention. So again, isn't really the goal of tonight to deep dive into these things, but it's important for you to know that those are part of the review was grounded in those practices. So here's what we did. First, there was a lot of just data analysis. So identification rates for special education, kind of the demographics of the system, what students and families do you serve. It can be really hard to separate out serving kids and serving families when it comes to special education. What are your staffing patterns? What does that look like across the system? So a fair amount of number crunching. I did spend some time in each of the schools, including C, the alternative program, and also your early education classrooms. And then spent a lot of time talking with people. So both district and building leaders, special educators, classroom teachers, some related service providers, support staff, and families. All of that information together was analyzed kind of according to theme. It was really important, especially for the people that I talked to, that it be confidential. So things were sort of rolled up and themes analyzed that way, and that's where the recommendations come from. So at a really high level, these are the themes, and there is more information and more detailed recommendations associated with these themes that I'm going to go through. Try to be quick, but it is a lot of information, so I'll just sort of acknowledge that. If someone has a burning question that you need me to stop, just raise your hand or interrupt me. Although I know Melody has some information that she'd like to share with you as well. So you can keep going, Joanne, because I think I'll just summarize the themes. So the first piece that I wanted to start with isn't actually a special ed specific recommendation and finding, it really has to do with kind of how very unified, how decisions were made about special education in the past and now. And really, you are like many districts in Vermont, you used to have a different governance structure. And so when decisions were made about how we would serve kids with disabilities, how many staff we would have, how we would use them, those were building by building decisions. There's cohesion and coordination, but at the end of the day, separate boards and administrations made those decisions. The work associated, and it's why I start with this recommendation, the work associated with improving special education isn't just about special education, it's about the whole system. And it requires the whole system together to think about what does that look like for the whole. So one of the findings is that you're still getting used to how you make decisions as a single unit and not as a kind of confederation of smaller units. So the recommendation associated with this is really to lean into what are your leadership structures, how do you make decisions, how do you prioritize things. So the next piece is about special education identification. This is one of those places where it's a lot of small numbers. I'm just going to try to highlight this for you. In Barrie, you have a higher than typical special education eligibility rate. So you have more students eligible for special education than in Vermont and in the nation. Vermont as a whole actually has more than the rest of the country. Barrie has significantly more than the state as a whole. There are a lot of potential reasons for that. And one of the things that you'll see in the recommendation is to really unpack what those reasons might be. And I'll talk a little bit about a couple of them before sort of saying, I think the goal is to reduce special ed eligibility. In fact, I would offer that that shouldn't be the goal. It is something that's important for you to understand is different. It's unusual. The way that you will address it is by improving programming as a whole. In fact, if special ed rates lower, it will be an outcome of your work, not necessarily a goal. The thing that I would highlight in this chart is two things. One is the increase over time. So the top chart is really your total, just like the rest of Vermont, you are declining in enrollment, and yet your percentage of kids eligible for special education is increasing. And then the bottom set of numbers that I wanted to pull out and highlight, often there is a correlation, and that means two things happen at the same time. It does not mean that something causes the other, but there is a correlation between high poverty rates and high rates of disability. Despite that, your two K-8 buildings that serve different communities have a very different demographic, and yet you both still have high special ed identification rates. So what's significant about that is it isn't as simple as saying, well, we have this demographic and therefore we have more kids. That doesn't necessarily match with the individual demographics of your communities. But that's why that data is pulled out. But the recommendation is really to understand why that is. And most specifically, the best way for the district to address high rates of special education is by looking at the underlying practices in the general education system. Often, high rates of special education come from more and more students' needs not being met in the classroom. And the next section will kind of talk about that in more detail. So this is about core instruction capacity. This chart just looks at, and it's sort of remarkable, the number at the bottom was the same in every single building and as a district. Three different types of plans, and I'll try to be brief. I'm sure you've heard Melody talk about these in the past. An education support team plan, that's what an EST is. That is a plan to support students who need intervention, but they don't necessarily have an identified disability. A 504 plan is a plan for a student who has an identified disability. It does not necessarily significantly impact their education, but they still need support and accommodation. And then IEP, individual education plan, is for students who meet eligibility criteria. If you take all of those numbers together, that represents how many kids in this district need something extra, something beyond the typical classroom. And as you can see, that bottom row of numbers is almost half, 43% of students. And that is a number that's not typically that high. So in the sort of, if you were to globally think about how much the general education classroom should meet the needs of students, we like to see typically around 80%. In other words, 80% of kids' needs should largely be met in the general education classroom. I think that percentage probably has fluctuated a little bit since COVID. School is different than it has been, but it still should meet most needs of most students. And so one of the things that's important, if you go to the next slide, Joanne, is that in some ways the capacity of the general ed system isn't meeting enough needs. So a lot of kids in the district need more intervention, and intervention, if the only way you can access intervention is through special education, your special education rates will be high, and the services that you have to provide to those students will be high.
I have a clarifying question about the previous slide of the numbers of the percentages of students with plans. Is there any overlap between a student that has a 504 and also an EST?
That's a great question. So typically these are, if you have a 504 plan, and Melody, you can correct me because there are some districts that have different practices, but typically those are, you're only on one of those plans.
Okay.
Occasionally there will be a student who has sort of like an allergy or a medical, something very, very concrete and specific, but largely those are separate students.
Thanks.
So not double counted. Great question. So the way that a system would look at this particular recommendation is to improve your multi-tiered system of support. I'm sure that is a phrase or an acronym that you've heard before, but that is it's the structure on which a system can find the kids who are struggling, intervene, decide whether or not that intervention is working, and then change, intervene again, right? Adjust the intervention. So there's a lot more information there about why that is so important, but that's the structure on which the system will build all of the rest of its work. It will result in improved core instruction. And it is system-wide work, right? So it's, okay, this is another chart with a lot of information in it. This is specific to how you deliver special education services. So I'm moving more specifically into special ed and not the entire system at the moment. The couple of caveats. There is no one way to provide special education services. And there is a consistent, there are some metrics in the research that say, here's about how many staffing resources you should have to meet the needs of your students. So when we analyzed the staffing in each of your buildings, we were looking at comparing your staffing to those numbers. So on the bottom part of that chart, which you can look at on your own, when we look at special educator density, that's how many special educators you have per your total student body. It's not measured just against kids on IEPs, because it's a recognition that special educators benefit the entire system, their expertise does. And the research will tell you, it's a big range, you want roughly one special educator for every 50 to 80 students, total students, okay? So that's one metric. The second metric, though, is you have high special ed identification rates. You also have to look at how many special education staff you have per eligible special ed student, because that's how you take into consideration caseloads, and you have a lot of identified kids, you have to meet their needs, right? So that middle column is how many special ed professionals to child count. Child count means the number of eligible special education services. And the right-hand column, which is an important and common metric in Vermont, is the number of support staff, so paraprofessionals. And that is compared to your eligible special ed students, because typically those folks are assigned to students or small groups of students. So this chart shows how you compare in those three areas. And the green is roughly that you are within range, both of the research and range of each other, right? Like sometimes your range is defined based on the district itself. How are you in comparison to yourselves? The yellow is you are about 10% outside of that range. And the red is you're farther outside that range, more than 30% outside of that range. So I'm gonna actually have you hop to the next slide. Actually stay there for a second, Joanne. Trying to be quick, but this one's complex. So you, as a whole, as a system, if you look at the district, you have about one special educator for every 46 students. You are well within range. Even if you adjust for your vacant positions, that is an absolute reality. All these numbers, by the way, were about April, May-ish of last year. So it's a point in time. And you had a lot of vacancies, like many districts in the state. So even when you account for those vacancies and pull them out as if they're not there, you still have adequate staffing as a district. And that is true in each of the areas. So density, special ed professionals to child count, and special education paraprofessionals. At Berrytown and Berry City, you have more staff than those ratios would call for. Not by a lot, 1 to 44 versus 1, right? That bottom number should be 1 to 50. But you're right about where you should be when you factor in vacancies, and 1 to 34 at Berry City. Again, right around 1 to 50 if you factor in vacancies. So that's what that chart looks like. What I want to emphasize, and now you can go on to the next one, Joanne, thanks. This is really related to, in the system, there isn't a cohesive service delivery model for how special ed services are delivered. So in large part, an individual case manager with their caseload will decide how to serve each one. It isn't really a model across the board. It's really important for you to invest in this work and not understand that previous slide as suggesting that you are overstaffed. I would not suggest that you are overstaffed. It's an investment that's really important. Over time, as your service delivery model solidifies, is there a possibility that staff could be used differently? Perhaps, but not right now, because one of the other findings within the system is that there are a lot of services that go unmet, that the schedule often defines whether or not a student can receive their services versus the system. So it wouldn't be prudent at this time to not continue to invest, but it's important for you to know what those numbers are.
Would it be appropriate to say those ranges are based on the averages, right? At the bottom of the last chart are based on schools that don't have that 43% rate and so are a little more balanced on the input, essentially.
Yeah, in a sense, that's
why the staff is, it seems like we have more, but we're still missing.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's why we also looked at the ratio to child count. If we only looked at density, the 50 to 80 number, then that would be true. We also needed to take into account, are there enough staff to distribute to have adequate caseload sizes? And your caseloads vary. They vary significantly, but again, they vary because there isn't a cohesive model and a way of saying, here's how we deliver services, here's how we distribute caseload, here's how we work with classroom teachers. And so there's a series of recommendations on this slide, and I'm not going to go into them in detail because I think it kind of just for time purposes, but it all just falls under this idea that the district is engaged in the work of saying, how should we be delivering services across the system? How do we distribute our staff? When you do that, you have an impact on how your paraprofessionals need to be used. You can invest in their work because they have a really important role, and it's a hard role. And if they're sort of scattered across the system, that job is hard and they will leave. And so some of those recommendations are kind of related to how do you support that part of your system as well. Going really fast, which I recognize, and then I really can ask questions. There's 2 slides here, and there's a series of recommendations that are specific to those evidence-based practices that you saw on an earlier slide. And I want to just pull out a couple of things. The first one is collaboration by itself is not just a value add, it's a component of service delivery. It's how special educators share their expertise with classroom teachers. It's how classroom teachers can integrate accommodations into the classroom. And right now, there aren't a lot of structures that exist in your school so that teachers have the time to talk to each other. So sort of a low-hanging fruit element is to help create structures. The leadership team talked a lot about this when they met. How do we make it so that our teachers can talk to each other about kids? So that is up there as a very specific evidence-based practice to enhance. There's also a recommendation specific to students with low incidence disabilities or significant needs. Right now, students in the system are taught sort of across grade levels, often pulled out of the classroom. And you have expertise in the system in intensive needs education, and it's not being maximized to kind of really invest in what should this look like? You have a population of students who should have more access to the general education curriculum than they do currently. And it's a body of work in and of itself. And I could spend a lot of time going into detail on that, but is beyond the scope of tonight. Certainly can do that if necessary, but there is a recommendation here around leverage that expertise you have in the system. You have the resources. That staffing shows you some of your staff who have that expertise could be repurposed to kind of lead the work of figuring out how to meet the needs of those students better. There is a specific recommendation around building capacity in the general ed system for students who struggle socially and emotionally. This is connected to the work of your alternative programs, because you have alternative classrooms within your K-8 buildings, and then you have an off-site alternative program at the high school. And specific to C, you can actually advance the slide, Joanne. You've got a lot of really dynamic and important things happening in that alternative program. And in order to know that it is best serving the needs of the kids that it serves, it really needs to be concrete about kind of entrance and exit criteria. Who are the kids that it should be serving? And the reason why those two recommendations go together is if the general ed system doesn't have capacity to serve kids, and this is specific to kids with social and emotional challenges, more and more students will need to be served in an alternative setting, and your alternative setting will balloon. And that two things. One, kids are being pulled out that don't necessarily need to, but it also then won't serve the kids that it should be serving. You are a big system, you are big enough to have a robust program, and that program has a lot of potential and does some really innovative things. That'll get lost if it's serving too many kids. So the recommendations around this are sort of working on both sides of the system, the general ed part, and then being really specific. And leveraging some of the things that SCA could do to bring kids either back into the fold here at Spalding, bring them into the tech center. There's some ways to shore up the often alternative programs. Kids go there and they stay there, and sometimes that's appropriate, but often we underestimate how many kids can go there for a little while, find a different pathway, and come back, and that requires both things. Early childhood special education was on that previous slide as well. I would say the recommendations specific to early childhood are very similar to just the overall recommendation. Those are general education classrooms, but they are governed by two different sets of rules in Vermont. That makes it really complicated. You serve students that don't necessarily come to school in your K-8 buildings because the law requires us to do that. And so it's really hard to have that be cohesive. So really looking at who does your early education program serve in both of your communities? What is the best way to serve them? Looking at that from a bird's eye view is one recommendation. And then the second one is really to understand those as general education classrooms, build the multi-tiered system of support for early education, just like you are for K-12. And then the last recommendation that I won't go into detail with because I'm going to turn it over to Melody, and I definitely went longer than I think I was supposed to, but Melody's going to talk a lot about compliance. What I came in to do in the system was not meant to look at special education compliance, but sometimes I would see practices that are actually connected to the compliance pieces that Melody will talk about. And it's just important to know that when things have been variable for a long time, practices that maybe started out appropriate have sort of turned into things that cause compliance issues. So that's a lot of information. I'm still here and can answer questions. Oh, there is one more. Thank you. Forgot about that. When we worked with special educators and your administrators, we actually put this slide first. And as I was sitting in the audience, I almost moved it to the beginning again. You have a lot of strengths in the system. This is big work to improve special education, but you're starting from a really important place. The biggest thing that I would say was universal in my time in each one of your buildings. You have teachers and staff who are incredibly committed to the kids and the families that they serve, and that's something to be commended. You wouldn't be able to make the change if you didn't. You have a system, including your leadership team, who did this proactively. They asked for this. You have a lot of pockets of excellence across the system. It's just a matter of bringing them to scale. And then a lot of things are already in motion. So sorry for skipping that.
All right. Questions for Megan before we move on to Melody's presentation?
Eric. Yeah, you had mentioned it a lot earlier in your presentation. I picked up on it when reading your report. What are some of, what are some of, I don't know how to word this without getting too in the weeds, but when thinking about identification and what sort of interventions could help in the general education setting, could you provide, I don't know, just speak to that a little bit more?
Well, I would say it this way. So as you improve, so your multi-tiered system of support allows a classroom teacher to say, here's the students in front of me, and how often do I look at the data and find out how they're doing? And when I see that a student's struggling, do I have the tools as a teacher first to say, what should I do? Do I have a chance to sit down with my colleagues and say, hey, these 3 or 4 students aren't quite where I want them to be on this math skill. Do you have any ideas? What should I do? And be able to do that and intervene in the classroom. I said math, you could insert literacy, you could insert social emotional learning, and improve the ability of the teachers to be able to do that. Then, right now, arguably, as soon as kids struggle, the only pathway for assistance is to go through special ed, hence the rates. So an intervention would be to put more tools in teachers' toolboxes and allow them to help monitor how those students are doing. When you do that, fewer students are referred for intervention. And intervention is a layer of your system that isn't even special education yet. Then only the kids who really need intervention are going to get intervention, and that intervention may also prevent the need for a student to continue to struggle. Special education, either there is a very clear disability that's been identified from a very young age, or it's students who are struggling over time and not improving. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's sort of what you would be looking at and what you are looking at.
Juliana, do you have documentation on those layers? So students who don't need as much intervention that can be helped in general ed versus students who are on the upper level who need to go to a higher, have a case manager or go on to places like C or.
Yeah, I would say really what happens is a district kind of defines the structures that carry kids through that system. So what I would and have shared and others who focus on MTSS share is, here are the structures you would put in place so that teachers can identify their students. You have a common assessment system that every student takes so that you know when they are struggling. And then what happens? The actual layers and what supports are in them is something that an individual district would define.
So you don't have like recommendations. It's basically what the district is feeling right now.
The recommendation would be to improve, there are a lot of resources of the report is connected to more of them on MTSS implementation. There's 5 components of a healthy MTSS. There's a lot of tools that you can use to self-assess. So the recommendation is actually to do that self-assessment, set actionable goals, and to move your way through so that it's really personalized.
Thank you.
Emily?
Thank you for the report and all of the information. Not sure if this is a question yet, but maybe I can just kind of tell you what one of the things I took away from this, and you can be like, yeah, you're not. When we're talking about our special education kids and we're talking about multi-tiered systems of support, right? And we're talking about that first layer, right? The classroom. This report seems to say that that classroom is where we need to be putting our resources in to that's not the right word, but to identify those needs right there. And when we start putting investments into that first tier of support, it benefits not only the kids who need the second or third tier, but also everyone else.
Yes.
And so then when we start putting those resources in, we'll start seeing our numbers change. That would be one marker, right? Instead of a 43%, and so as a board, like I appreciate seeing all these practices and recommendations, but those are for our superintendent and our admin. What are some ways the board can think about supporting this work or looking for ways to identify progress? Do you have any?
Yeah, and you two can stop me at any point because I know you're paying attention to time. It's a great question. What I would say is that, first of all, resources means lots of different things. There's human resources, there's skill set resources, there's professional learning. So it's all of the above. And part of the work that I think is ongoing in the system is to sort of say, how do we improve our system of professional learning? One of the people, I know Melody is here, but your director of curriculum is connected to this. She and Melody work in partnership together because that's how you get the whole system element of this, to be able to say, here's how we teach literacy in this system. Here's how we teach it at all of the grade levels. Here's how we teach math. Here's how we intervene. So it's a little unsatisfying because it's a very system level conversation and it isn't really concrete, but they're all kind of a part of that system. But the piece that I would think about is right now, this goes back to the resources issue specific to human resources. You have a high number of students that you do need to serve because there's some gaps in how you're serving them. And in order to sort of stop the cycle, you also have to improve on the general ed system. And at the moment, you have to kind of hold both of those things at the same time so that, yes, eventually, typically we would see a reduction in eligibility and then zeros, but it's a long-term answer.
Jackie?
Sorry, I don't know if it relates to what Emily said, but it reminded me, do these studies, specifically like on our percentage and all that, do they take into account, or can they, short answer, no, but the community at large where these districts are located, other than like poverty statistics, like third spaces, availability of non-school programs, availability of like commutes, work, like any sort of, not even just economic, do they take that into account, or that's what they think?
No, it's a great question, and I won't try to deep dive enough into answer it, but I do think that is for your system in particular is a critical element of it. It's I'll use early ed as an example. That's one of those structures that you have to design around the community that you live in. Where do kids typically receive childcare? Are they at home? Are they at a neighbor? Are they at a couple of centers? Are they spread apart? I've worked in systems where the answer to that question is all of those things. So partnerships, who are your designated agencies? Who are the supports in the system? They're all part of it. The walls of the school aren't walls, so they are all part of that system. It's just harder to leverage supports that you don't fully have control over. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but
I feel like that could be bigger. So if you don't mind, I'd like Melody to have an opportunity to move on to compliance. It's probably, a little different of a presentation. So Melody.
Well, thank you. And I think just for folks who have other questions, and there are a couple just related to your recommendations and some of the information, you'll see one, if you already haven't, that some of the due diligence review specifically mirrors exactly what we kind of found and a little bit kind of were thinking was happening in our district from, Dr. Roy's report. This report was a sense of what we thought might have been happening. And so it's not a lot of news to us. There's not a lot of surprises to us. And so tonight, what I'll be talking to you about is actually what we're already doing about many of these things. And that includes the recommendations from Dr. Roy. So I'll focus on that, knowing that in our community forum that's coming in October, that there'll be even more details about some of these recommendations and even some more clarity and like handouts, for example, around some of the procedures, because one of the things we talk about is like, how do we also help people just understand the whole system so that we're all on the same page and recognizing where can we get the supports and how and what makes sense. So I'm going to go through the first couple of monitoring reports very briefly, but again, focusing on what we're doing about it. Those truly are compliant focused. The due diligence review, what I'll say is that they didn't find us to be out of compliance as it relates to the things that they were looking at. So again, what I'll focus on is their recommendations for our systems and what we're already doing and some things that were future focused. So cyclic monitoring, really every 3 years, it looks at, a variety of different districts. The state, we were up. It actually was a perfect timing, actually, from my perspective in terms of the due diligence review, Dr. Roy's review. But it looks at several different specific indicators and they choose each one. The summary of performance, we were compliant. The rest of them, we were out of compliance. And when we look at those, indicator 11 is about evaluations, initial evaluations, as well as that 3-year review. And what it said to us was, based on information, this is prior to when we were here. So the monitoring data prior to July 1st when we came in. But it was saying that the past practices were that our reviews were not on time and within a time frame, both our annual reviews as well as our 3-year reviews. And the expectation is that we're 100% compliant. Every time there's an annual, every time there's a 3-year, it should be happening within the time frame, and it had not for the data that they took. For the post-secondary transition plans, that's indicator 13. What they found for those plans that were pulled from like 2 years ago, that they were not providing evidence of student invitation, inviting the outside agencies, age-appropriate assessments, and then adequate and measurable post-secondary goals, the real true purpose of the transition plans. And then the summary of performance, which we were compliant, really looks at transition services and like the course of study as the student moves on. So what are we going to do about the things that we were out of compliance for? In terms of the evaluations piece,
Am I going too fast?
No.
Are you sure?
I think so. I'm looking here, so we're at response.
Tell me to move along or to
So we're
stop.
on slide 22, which is under.
Okay, I'm moving too fast.
Yeah. So the response around the evaluations, right? So that was 81 triennial. So we've created what is a district-wide evaluation team. That includes SLPs, OTs, PTs, as well as intervention administrators. That is a much larger team, and there's a clear agenda, and there's clear checklists and procedures that we have developed. This will best ensure that we are really compliant with when things are coming up, how are we making decisions, what data are we, asking for in order to make those decisions, and then ensuring that the right next steps are happening that include our evaluators, our psychologists, and our special educators. And so with that, we meet weekly, and then I'm meeting both weekly and bi-weekly with specific evaluators and psychologists to really monitor how we are doing with these evaluations and specifically the timelines, but also how we're making decisions. The goal is really to minimize, if not eliminate, the future non-compliance and really making sure that our dates are solid. And that's one that we can really improve on. In terms of the transition plans, That's also our target monitoring. So this district has actually failed, I guess that's the only word I can use, sorry. But they have failed in this particular area over the course of several years prior to this. So now, you know, we can really target that. What we're going to do is a few things, one of which is, you know, monitoring again through supervision in our district work, our department work at Spalding in particular, because it's for high school students, but just monitoring what are the assessments that we're utilizing, who are the folks in our school that are really like leading that work and ensuring that they are meeting the best practices. John Spinney's from the AOE and he has several resources. So we'll be using those this year in particular as we're, you know, reviewing any student that's age 16 and above, starting that process and then monitoring throughout their career.
One thing to know, not to interject, but it's kind of important for the board to understand that is a targeted area for almost every school district in Vermont.
Yeah.
So transition plans is a challenge all over Vermont. So
Thank you.
they have a statewide approach that's not unique to Barry, and many are also in that sort of multiple. So yeah, what the positive part of that is they have designated agency resources to kind of help you. So that's just context-wise, that's important to know.
Thank you. And then, so then if we move to targeted monitoring, I appreciate you sharing that. And actually the AOE, and this is not to alleviate any responsibility that we have, nor our dedication to doing these improvements, but the AOE has noted around how this whole process has been developed, and they're shifting it because a lot of now, if you just made a mistake, you could be non-compliant. Now it's like, oh, you made one mistake, we just like you to correct it, and then you're cleared. Because not all of this means that you have a massive problem. It could mean that you have a date or two that's off, and now you're put into targeted monitoring, as an example. But I will say that these are things that we need to prove, and this is why we're doing some pretty major interventions, specifically to our evaluation. So targeted monitoring was similarly around indicator 13 and transition plans. So as I said, we're already addressing that with this Spalding department. The other part that we were compliant, but I wanted to share a little bit about, is we were monitored separately on transition plans for Part B to C, which is early education. While we were compliant, I want you all to know that we reached out immediately to folks at the AOE that deal with early education and asked for them to come in and meet with us to better understand what they were looking for in this transition plan and how to improve. So while we're compliant, there's ways that we can actually improve and they let us know that. So they're actually going to be meeting with myself, the program director, Elizabeth, and our assistant director of special services, Lori Smith. We're meeting with those two folks next week, and then we're going to be working with our special educators specifically in advance of any other monitoring to ensure that we're better understanding that process and doing exactly what we should be doing. And that was Amy Murphy, you'll see it, and Katie McCarthy, who are from the AV. So we're really excited about that partnership. And again, it's something that we're looking to do as a district, reach out in advance and really partner with folks so that we can improve our practices. So now to the due diligence review. So I put under the February 3rd, 2025, these were the things that had popped up as to why this was initiated by the AOE. So one was the repeated cyclic and targeted monitoring non-compliance that happened, again, under the previous administration. There were concerns around FAPE due to the short staffing. So as many of you may know, Joanne and I were always about transparency from the first day we stepped in here. And so last year was that letter around short staffing and how we were going to mitigate. So that led to some concerns that the AOE had along with some individual filings of complaints related to that. So all of those things combined led them to ask and proceed with the due diligence review. Again, as I said earlier tonight, there was no evidence to suggest that we were out of compliance for the alleged violations that were identified. And you can look in the report, it's very clear as what they were looking at, so that we were not found to be out of compliance. And that's really exciting. That's really good news. And that's what we actually did think. We thought that we were really doing some really good work. And there's some obviously some clear areas for us to improve. So the recommendations, the way I set this up is we'll go through the recommendations and then I'll share what our response already has been and what we'll continue to do. So the one around evaluations is really looking at the special education evaluation implementation guide and establishing our own procedures. We are well on our way and have already begun to do that and already have those things put in place. We've created a district evaluation team. We are going to be providing educational opportunities for staff, meaning we have our district team that's going to go along to each of the buildings to try to help provide education around what does it mean to request an special education evaluation. Just because you requested it, what does it actually mean in terms of what the next steps are? As a caregiver, what does it mean that I have a right to request? You absolutely have a right to request, and there are some steps that can take place within an MTSS system prior to moving into special education. And so we're working on, again, that understanding and that education piece. And the goal is obviously to minimize non-compliance through system monitoring, ensure that we're maintaining compliance in our reevaluations, and then increase our understanding for all stakeholders about what that process is so that we can begin to leverage the expertise of all of our staff through the MTSS lens. This goes to a little bit what you were talking about and the question about gap, right? Like, how do we identify our students? And so the recommendation, the SSIP learning modules, right now, what that means is there's a module online, but they're specific around math. So for our district, the district is going to be working around exploring that module as it pertains to math and trying to identify what, as a district, are we going to be looking at in order to early identify students with struggles in math, and what are our interventions going to be looking like. There's also another recommendation for training around progress monitoring, how to collect and utilize data to inform instruction and intervention within an MTSS system, and how can it be consistent. From a special education lens, we're looking at that as one of our main goals this year in terms of how are we providing intervention and how are we progress monitoring for each of our students. Amanda Riggleman will also talk about the work that's happening just in terms, again, our MTSS system. We have an MTSS coordinator. So all of us actually are working with all of our staff around exactly what we were talking about, which is how are we providing formative and or summative assessments with the general ed classroom? How are we using data and data gathering processes to identify students and then get that early intervention through 6-week cycles, 12-week cycles, so they can really do those interventions that will likely help them get the boost that they need, and they can just continue on without needing more intensive supports.
These are the smaller grain size examples of what do you do to start this. These are examples of that.
Yep.
Just a real quick question. Are our schools each on continued improvement plans, continuous improvement plans, like already?
So the CIP, there is a CIP for the district, and then each school has to develop their own CIP. And so yes, they have their own continuous improvement plan, and part of our improvement kind of is this that's wrapped into their CIP.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Very specifically, EST programming. So, Dr. Roy mentioned EST, and we are looking at and have developed clear procedures for EST. We're working on identifying those and then aligning those across the district. That was a piece of work that was started this summer with our administration. So that is in the beginning stages. And we do have some schools that are farther along, and we're going to be looking at any school that already is farther along in one of these components as pilots and then models to then realign for all of our districts, schools. So that EST programming and procedures is a really great checkpoint and an opportunity for intervention cycles. Our district evaluation team is leveraging that system. So if you have an evaluation that comes through the district team, we will provide recommendations that can go back to the building EST team to try to do an intervention if they don't meet that criteria to go on to special ed. By having a more robust district eval team with the SLPs, OTs, and PTs, the hope is that they are also providing recommendations that can be done in the building. Again, those short intervention cycles, so we can address some of those skills sooner than having to have a full evaluation. And because there may not be a need. We have an MTSS coordinator, so we have that, and that is brand new, and so that's also about that is the next step in terms of her role across the district and working within buildings to identify more ways to support our teachers, more ways to provide educational training to our teachers, as well as at the intervention level and then beyond. Panorama, I won't go too much into that, but that is also a district-wide program, so that's all about data collection and monitoring. So we have invested in a tool that is going to allow us to better serve our understanding of identification and then response. And then the focus on universal instruction and access to universal instruction. So our schedules in each of the buildings have shifted, and I won't go into, try not to take it literal in terms of shift, but bell schedules have been looked at very intentionally to provide enough opportunity for core instruction, which is the most important, as well as opportunities for intervention and specially designed instruction from special educators. There are times where you can push into a classroom, and there are times where you want to ensure that you're providing that specially designed instruction. Most of the time right now, that can't happen inside the classroom. And so because of our rates, we're really trying to ensure that we're both allowing our students in the general ed classroom and accessing core instruction, but not getting pulled out either during that core instruction and missing class. So at Spalding in particular, we have developed a schedule in which there are specific service blocks. Those are just like any other class for a student. So they should not be getting pulled out of their general education history class to receive their services. So we can now, one, in terms of making sure all services are being accounted for, that allows us to ensure that all services in every IEP at Spalding is accounted for and scheduled. It means that the students can access their entire core instruction for all their general education classes, and they will still get their specially designed instruction reinforced through a special educator or a social worker or an SLP or OT or PT. So that's one way at Spalding. They're doing a very similar thing at C, at Spalding Educational Alternatives, so very similar, ensuring that they're getting access to general core instruction as well as specially designed instruction. And then similarly at Berry City and Berry Town, we have asked that all special educators are creating teaching schedules that clearly outline where every single service for their students on their caseload is happening. This was a big priority for ours coming into this year to ensure that when we are talking with parents and caregivers, we can clearly say, we are providing the services in your IEP when it comes to academic services. And the recommendations from the AOE are that direct instruction is largely provided by the special educator. There is an act called Act 173 that allows some flexibility for other qualified providers, but ideally the specialized instruction is provided by a special educator. I will say that one of the things, just to relate back to what we were talking about, time to collaborate, and then this place we are in, which is high numbers, high caseloads, and now these schedules that are really maximizing the opportunity to ensure all students are getting their services. And we kind of did this pretty abruptly. Our teachers are doing the best they can. And so I want to also acknowledge that, right? This is not about teachers not trying or not caring or not having necessarily all the skills. It's a matter of here's where we're finding ourselves, but there's a lot of needs, and how are we collectively partnering to make sure they're met. So what we do have, right, with these blocks is that our special educators are doing what they should be doing, which is providing specially designed instruction. But that is then taking out of the general ed setting is like having the special educators around all the time to like help out. So we also recognize that then there's a true need for that collaboration, and recognizing that all of that is not perfect right now. So there's absolutely a recognition that we're shifting the pendulum, and there's only so much time in the day, and we haven't been able to hit everything perfectly to allow all the collaboration, to get all the skills necessary to all the right folks to be able to, right, to be the best they can be. And we have high numbers. So here we are doing the best we can, and everybody is doing the best we can, but that's the rub right now.
Would it be fair to say, and I may not be fully, because I'm not an educator, but would it be fair to say it's a little easier to schedule this around core classes in a high school setting than in a grade versus junior high, in the sense that high school already has these things blocked out?
No.
Equally challenging. Okay.
It is equally challenging. I think what, again, and I've been working with building principals, and at Berry City in particular, we have a little bit of a different service model, and it has been true collaboration between myself and the principals, as well as the department's, folks as well. But like, you just need to understand what the individual schedule is. And so, yep.
Juliana?
So when you talk about collaboration, are you also speaking about professional development, or is that a separate thing?
So when we talk about collaboration, it's like within the school day, how are we ensuring?
So
that there's
teams of
That's correct.
working together.
Yep.
with planning time, like?
It could look like a lot of different things, but just, yes, clearly identify time that we can continue to ensure that collaboration and partnership is happening and sharing of expertise. Yep. So systems and data use and monitoring, the recommendation, this was about least restrictive environment. And so what we're talking about is, you know, placing a student in a more restrictive environment is adding a one-on-one. A lot of times that's not kind of known. When you do place a one-on-one with a student, you are actually restricting them, and it is a change of placement, even though they remain in the public school setting. There should be a lot of dialogue. There should be significant data to inform why that is happening, and then there should be some clear understanding of if there is that change of placement and we are placing a one-on-one, what is the purpose of that staff member? It's not just to be there. What is the skills we are delivering? How are we monitoring that skill development? And so there are some important steps that we need to be taking, not only about sending students outside of our district, but also how we are making decisions with our supports inside of our building. We use the adult determination form. That is something that Lori Smith, our assistant director of special services, really started working on last year and will continue pre-K through 12. So it should be the same pre-K through 12 in terms of when you're trying to make that decision. It's a big decision. You really want to look at data, and then if that decision has been made, we really want to monitor that to make sure that that intervention is being effective.
Alice?
I have a question. The adult determination form, does that also include students who have met their goals and would be considered for declassification?
Yes, thank you very much. So yes, that should be, and this is one of the AOE's recommendations, that you're looking at that annually because you want to assess, does a student still need that or not? And if they've met all of their goals and they no longer need that, we have the data to provide and suggest that they should be removed, that support should be removed. That is a celebration.
Yes.
And absolutely, that is something that we began again to do last year and have some really great celebrations for students developing that level of independence, and that will continue.
And is there a period of time for additional, not really additional, but for follow-up support for students who have been declassified? So that, for example, is there like a year's worth of monitoring to make sure that they are successful in the general education classrooms?
Yeah, so anything should, yes, any kind of service should be monitored both when it's in and then when it's removed. So the idea is that if let's say a one-on-one was removed because the student had achieved their goals and no longer needs that all the time, then we would work to have a clear transition plan with some data checkpoints, as well as, like, you know, are there times where there may be a check-in, for example, right? So I think that it's not just removing a support, it is what in lieu of that support needs to continue to remain to allow for successful transition and continued independence.
Thank you.
Specially designed instruction. So through specifically at Spalding, but really throughout the entire district, we are very focused on specially designed instruction. I outlined the goals that we, as special services providers, so it's not just special educators, our whole district is using the Danielson framework, and supervision of all staff is a priority of the district. For our special services, we have kind of outlined, based on the review of Dr. Roy, the AOE, the cyclic and targeted monitoring, been very specific about here's where we'd like you to kind of identify your goals. The first can be in planning preparation, and it can be either in setting instructional outcomes or designing and analyzing assessments. That first one is around specially designed instruction. So most of our staff may be choosing to really focus on how am I preparing and planning my instructional blocks, how am I using evidence-based practices with designing our instruction and our intervention, and then how are we monitoring that? And then with the designing and analyzing assessments, it is, you know, what assessments, both formative and more summative, am I using to progress monitor for students all year long? Not just at particular progress reports or like over, you know, vacation breaks, if you will, but like how are we regularly progress monitoring our interventions to assess our own work as a staff member and its effectiveness, but also the growth of the student. So specially designed instruction is a clear goal for ourselves in terms of understanding what is it that we are providing as special educators and service providers.
Dr. Frank, I'm sorry to interrupt. And you're talking about monitoring that's beyond report cards or
Absolutely.
standardized tests,
That's
right?
correct.
Like more individual.
Yep. And through understanding specially designed instruction and what like intervention I'm doing, whether it's literacy or math or SEL, I should then also know what outcomes we're hoping for and then what assessments I might want to use to measure that progress. And that can look like a lot of things. It doesn't have to be like discrete trials of numbers, right? At the high school level, you can take a sample from writing and assess writing samples. So there are a lot of different ways, but ultimately is what are we doing and why are we doing it and how are we monitoring the work that we're doing is really important. One of the recommendations, and that was from Dr. Roy's report, and then that was mentioned, though not in the specific recommendation from the due diligence report, but is noted a lot, is the idea of professional development and the feedback that we received from staff around the professional development. In working with Amanda Ribbon and the Director of Curriculum, we have provided and put together a really comprehensive professional development plan for all of our staff in all of the roles within special services. So I did outline it here. One of the things that we're focused on, especially design instruction and progress monitoring. So on the final slide, I can actually go into the very specifics. This kind of talks about what the recommendations were and the evidence and needs. But what we're doing is letters is the science of reading. All special educators, pre-K through 12, are engaged in the letters training, which is a very intensive training that is taking place over all of our early release days, all of our professional development days, and 2 out of the 4 rotations of Tuesdays. We're really focused on literacy. We're focused on student outcomes when it comes to reading. It is extremely important, so you got to prioritize one thing, and there's obviously, we're going to look at math, and I've already talked about that in terms of other recommendations, but literacy is extremely important, and the district has made the decision that we are going to prioritize that. So pre-K through 8 teachers, pre-K through 12 special educators, all year long are going to be engaging in this around literacy. The idea from a special services perspective is if you are the experts reinforcing what's in the classroom and you understand wholeheartedly what is happening in universal instruction, then their expertise around additional levels of support, and especially design instruction, can be that more impactful because you have that shared mutual understanding, and we can really partner from a teacher or special educator perspective because we have the same understanding going into it. Our paraprofessionals have a year-long in-person training. We're partnering with Green Mountain Behavioral Consultants. Again, it is comprehensive. It is happening through all of their full professional development days, also through their early release days. And then there's even monthly consultation with small groups throughout the school. Kind of just pulls some specifics from the scope and sequence, but it's really informing what are the interventions that our paras are engaging in and why, what data collection are they using and how are they helping to analyze it, and then what does their collaborative work look like within special ed and general ed. So we also, in addition to that, have everybody trained with Handle with Care. In this past spring, we had all support staff train under the de-escalation portion of CPI, which is crisis prevention and intervention. Really, really focused on our staff who are doing really difficult jobs, ensuring that they have the right training. And then this year-long scope and sequence is not just about training, it's about continued education, opportunity to reflect on their practices, and then the consultation throughout the year. We're working with Washington County Mental Health very similarly for all other support staff. So all non-para support staff or behavior support staff are going to be engaging in a very similar scope and sequence that should be beginning in October with our early release and then our professional development days. Very similar. They are going to be working together aligned with the para training because our other support staff will be working with our paras. Often they can be working with special educators, and so we want that work to be very aligned. Working with our occupational therapists and our physical therapists, we created a year-long professional development plan. I did work with them last year coming into this year, so they have their own individual kind of scope and sequence. When I started last year, I recognized kind of as I was going throughout the year that there were different groups that were kind of not addressed, and that were all a little bit independent in what they were doing. And so when meeting with all of these, they were very open to partnering and creating a really intentional practice for themselves and professional development plan. The SLPs, we are in that process. Again, I wasn't able to do all of this last year, so I reached out to them and we already started in our pre-service with this discussing, starting with the September, what is it that it looks like for our SLPs. And then evaluators, psychologists, and clinicians, we're going to be using those professional development times both to have some formal trainings, and then we're going to be reviewing the fidelity of our own processes. I'm a licensed clinical and school psychologist, so this actually is my area of expertise, and recognizing that that doesn't exist anywhere else in our district, that's going to be an opportunity for us to explore the fidelity of our process. How are we understanding, how we're assessing, how are we analyzing data and making sense of it, and then how are we reporting out on that. So again, really comprehensive professional development plan. We recognize that it's taking a ton of the time of our staff, and we've heard that it's extremely important in terms of our movement forward. So what's next? More details about all of these different interventions and our response to the recommendations coming in the Fall Community Forum, which is Wednesday, October 22nd. Location to be announced. I'm not quite sure which of the buildings.
And that's it. Questions?
Yeah, Jeff?
So much really relevant, valid, thank you for the explanation and all the details. My question is about your tools for assessing the SEL work that we have in front of us. And wondering, like, do we have baseline data? Do we have a program right now where we are collecting that live data on how students are doing and staff are doing in school?
That is a great question. The answer is yes. So Panorama, we actually rolled that out with an SEL survey at the end of the school year last year to get, I wouldn't call it baseline data because you need to have a certain number of folks kind of responding, but we were able to use it to kind of review the process, go through the process in our district so that we can now do it this year and have really some solid baseline data. But it is an SEL survey, and it is looking at the well-being of our students. And our MTSS coordinator just reached out to folks across the district who may have expertise in helping us create some specific questions that are going to target our different developmental age groups, so that is a really good survey that hits the needs of our students. And then that'll be used regularly without changing the survey, so that can be baseline data, and then we can really assess how our interventions impacting our students' overall well-being.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's through Panorama.
All right, Emily?
Thank you very much for all of this. I just had a few questions for Joanne, thinking about the community forum. And, one of the things I saw throughout these reports when we're talking about survey results, they were very low results. So we're not really getting enough data from the population. That's one of the things I think, that's one of our challenges in Barry is community engagement, and that can be tied to student outcomes. So I'd really, maybe as a board, we can think about ways to encourage community engagement, how we're interacting with parents. One of the reports talked about the dynamic between parents and special educators and admin, and that really stood out to me. There was just a little blurb about that. So I think that could be a good goal for our board to understand how to support our community, how to bring them to our schools, and because it is tied to our student outcomes.
It is. Thank you, Emily.
Thanks.
Well, so this is a training where we're not taking public comment. Thank you, though. All right.
Megan and Melody, I want to thank you very much for your presentation tonight. It was extremely well received, I can see from the board, and I look forward to the follow-up with the community in October. So
I have a
thanks.
question. Is Megan going to be at the community forum? Because I do have a question for her. It wasn't so much a comment.
How about if I make that connection for you, Lindsay? I'm sure that Melody and Megan would be more than happy to answer any offline questions.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. So we have the regular minutes for August 4th, 2025, special meeting, August 12th, 2025, August 18th, 2025, warrant approval, August 14th, 2025, August 21st, 2025, August 27th, 2025, we've got three new hires, and I'll let you present that.
I have to go back to my notes. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's fine.
Get that
Jay
somewhere.
Baylor. Oh,
Yeah, so I do have a summary. Did you receive my summary on each candidate? I mean, I could speak to it offhand, but I want you to know this group, just as I've mentioned previously, we're really excited. Even though we were hiring late, we're really hiring some quality people. Mr. Julian comes to us as an extremely experienced teacher, as you can tell. And he was thinking about going into retirement. And so when the position became available at Berry City, he was very excited about that. And so he went through the interview process, and we will still be able to use our outdoor education environment. But he has a lot of enthusiasm, and he's really excited about that. Mr. Tom Bowl has a wealth of experience with counseling, as well as coaching, leadership, and leadership areas. And he has an expertise in trauma-informed practice. So we're excited for him to join us as well. Back to my list. Kathleen Brule. Kathleen also has some really good experience in mathematics. We're helping her get through her peer review and her licensing, but we have full confidence that that's going to be resolved in the next month or so. She will be teaching 7 and 8 math in Berry City. And yeah, she's also a local. I think she lives in Berrytown. So we're excited about Kathleen joining us. And I think that's it.
And then we also got the resignation of Patrick Peters, who's going to be a principal. Do you know where?
I do, in the White River Junction area. I forget what particular school, but as you know, we get a late request for resignation if they're under contract. We reconsider it, but no one wants to keep an employee from taking this next step in their career. So we wish Patrick well.
Absolutely. Before I solicit a request for a motion, is there any modifications to the minutes? Okay. In that case, so the appropriate motion would be to approve the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Alice, seconded by Ian. Discussion, public comment. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to board reports, we'll start with the facilities. The next meeting is September 18th. Do you have anything you want to tell us? Or not 18th, I said 18th. Well, it says, yeah, sorry about that.
We met just before this meeting, went over the summer projects. The majority of them are complete, except for some final items to be addressed with the stormwater projects.
Great. All right, finance.
Yeah, the finance did not meet at our last meeting, but I would like to remind the board that we did approve at the prior meeting the budget calendar, so everybody can take a peek at that. We just put it forward for the board to review and have an idea of what the finance committee is going to be up to. But we've got a lot of work to do in the months ahead, and look forward to working with the whole board.
Okay, thank you. Policy?
Yes, we did a reading of the behavioral threat assessment team policy, which is in our packets and we'll be discussing soon. We prepared for, just did an overview of the report from the SBA, and we're going to be welcoming Sandra at our next meeting, which is in 2 days. And that's it.
Great. All right, so the Payne Mountain and Orange Southwest consolidation. First, I do want to say thank you to the board for allowing myself and Giuliano and of course Joanne to attend in as representatives. It was an interesting meeting. I can see their interest in wanting to sculpt their future for redistricting, and I 100% support that idea. I'm not sure, and I might be wrong on this, but my thoughts on it was it didn't look like it was going to go very far, their conversations. I know that I had suggested that each district that's interested in working with them do 2 to 3 members and work on creating a map, but I didn't see any real interest in them doing that. And they discussed the desire to have public input. The problem is that the maps are due on December 1st, I believe.
Yeah.
And there's not really much time for public input. So it was a nice meeting, but I didn't really see much that, would really concern us, unfortunately. That being said, I do have a question for the board on that. Do we want to be the sculptors of our own? And the fact is that we're kind of a unicorn district. We have 2,200.
About 2,000, give or take.
About 2,000, somewhere around there. We're one of the largest districts in our area. I think we're actually the largest district in our area, which means that people that have the smaller districts are going to want us to build their numbers, right? And I think that's something that we have to be very cognitive of as we move forward and determine what we want to do. I know that, was it Washington Central? I think it might have been Twinfield or Washington Central are talking about suggesting union districts. And, does that work for Berry City does that work for Berry when we have the largest district and we have 3 people that the same representation as, Twinfield or something? No offense, I keep saying Twinfield because it's one of the small ones. That's something that, do we maybe want to, on our own volition, make suggestions to the redistricting task force? And me personally, I think we should, which would require us to meet a couple times to discuss that. Emily.
I'm interested in having this conversation. I don't feel like this agenda item is necessarily like I'm prepared to do that, but so maybe this is something we could talk about in the future. There are opportunities coming up that we as school board members can attend the Vermont School Board Association regional meeting. We'll have time there to ask questions of the co-chairs of the redistricting committee. There's opportunities coming up with the redistricting committee for public opinion. And, I think being organized to put some advocacy there would be important, but I think we need more of a scope to guide our discussion. So I think we should talk about this further.
So, okay, Jackie?
I have a question. Generally speaking, do we know our sort of like hopes and fears as it's attached to this redistricting? Do we hope for certain things? Are we afraid of certain things happening, or is it just kind of up in the air?
So, which is the reason why I asked the question is, do we want to further discuss this? And I think that's the question, right? Do we, and we can't do it on a regular school board meeting. We just can't.
Why not?
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, we can discuss every
It could be
Something we can't do together.
Good job, Garrett.
just
Nothing
thinking
we
that
can't
would
do
be a-
together.
A lengthy board meeting and.
Well, I think it needs to be facilitated. It can't be free flow. I
Yeah.
think we need to have an outcome in mind, and some key questions, and I'm happy to
Reach out to Tracy.
I could do it, but I
Oh,
could reach
you
out
could do
to
it. I suppose you
Tracy.
could do it too.
And also bring in the information that Mike DeWeese and Jean Collins collected. Remember, that was part of this conversation. So I think using that, reviewing that information and really being informed about where the consolidation committee is at this point, and they are doing a great job of getting public information out. I would encourage anyone to take a look at the YouTube videos and just inform yourself. The website has a lot of information on it. I can put something together if you don't want to sift through things. But yeah, I think putting an agenda item on that's connected to our community engagement plans, as well as what this board would like to see, they're still open for feedback. That's the good news.
And they, I think they're meeting Wednesday, which they're meeting, you can watch it on YouTube. I would wait until the meeting's over and then modify the speed. It's like 4 hours long. You know, and I know that their template, which as they discuss it, they're talking about reducing cost, quality, efficiency, execution, and fairness and equity.
You say they were reducing quality?
Did I say reducing quality?
Okay, I said reducing cost and quality.
Reducing cost. Sorry. Yeah, reducing quality. No. So, okay, so we'll put that on the agenda and have a little bit of a conversation. I sent the link to that districting, and I'll be I'm asking as a intellectual endeavor. Go on to that link, play with it, create your district, why you think that district should be that way, and we can talk about it at the board meeting. Does that sound like something that you guys would be interested in doing?
It sounds like homework.
I know, but it's so much fun. Believe me when I say this, it is a lot of fun.
What website is it?
I'll resend it, and
Okay.
we'll also attach it in when we send out the agenda. Emily?
I was just going to suggest that, like, the redistricting, the map, that's fun. But, you know, we need to make some foundational decisions first. You know, we, as a board, we need to set some goals, think about what's best for our students, you know, so we can be in a position to better advocate for them. And, you know, so I would suggest that we do that kind of first, focus on our goals, and really the map making stuff to me is very secondary. Before we've identified goals, it's hard to, you know, I know it's exciting.
Yeah, well, I think when regarding the map, you would want to take into consideration what they're talking about, which is those particular items: cost, equity, efficiency. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because we should do it pretty quickly and give them the idea of what our board is thinking if we want to do that. And if we don't want to do that, that's a choice our board can make and just let it happen. Jeff?
Well, to kind of build off what Emily was saying about the foundational pieces, I know that the board work from Twinfield Union Schools school board conversations that have been continuing to happen, they were really focused on making sure that like the culture of our school and our communities like were honored and not like set off to the side as like, nah, that's not as much important as the other pieces. And yeah, furthermore, they just kind of asked the board and the community to kind of like look within themselves and identify like, well, is it the Northeast Kingdom? Is it the Central? Is it moving south? Is it a bunch of small schools banding together? But that cultural piece was a significant touch point that I think we should consider as we continue moving forward and having conversations. We don't want to lose our culture.
Alice?
I think we also have to be cautious that we don't give the perception that we are trying to supplant what the redistricting committee is doing, because that could cause some disturbance in the community if something happens differently from what we maybe have talked about, and then folks might say, well, what about your plan? What happened to your plan? And recognize the order of things and what the opportunity is to put our beliefs to the redistricting committee rather than going ahead and creating our own world and then saying, here it is, and then them saying no. So I think it has to be knit together.
I agree, but if you don't ask, you don't get. So we'll put that on the agenda for, I guess, October 6th or whenever it is. All right. Anything else? Okay. Moving on to first reading of behavioral threat assessment team, policy F5. It was in the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Garrett. Is there a second? Seconded by Jeff. Discussion?
I just have a point of interest. I apologize for being late, but I was at the Career Center meeting, which is having their board meeting tonight as well. A question that came up at that meeting in regard to this particular policy was the ongoing question of students and cell phones in schools. And one of the questions was, if you take away the cell phones, are you hampering the ability to get any information about a major, now I'm not talking minor, but a major threat in a school? So that was just something to think about. The coordination between the cell phone policy and this policy.
In response to that, the symposium, I guess, that we had gone to on the cell phone policy, they brought that up and they had actually done some research on it, and they found that in cases where there were situations, students having cell phones actually impeded the process of law enforcement or any help coming. And that was surprising to me too, because I had the same question, but I do remember them having that and they brought it up.
And just to follow up on that, because I think they mentioned it in the meeting, or it might have been somewhere else, the National SRO Association highly recommends cell phone free schools.
It's like the NRA.
SRO, National SRO. SRO.
I was just like, did you just say that? Oh, I'm so sorry. I misheard you.
No.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right. So any other discussion? No? All right. Public comment? None? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on to BUUSD proxy line, multi-line and unemployment authorization. So my assumption is it's you. So the motion would be to authorize Joanne Canning as the BUUSD proxy for multi-line and unemployment. Emily?
We can certify a person or we can certify a proxy. So I would make a motion to appoint the proxy, which is appoint as its true and lawful attorney, the board of directors of the Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust by majority vote with the power of substitution for it and in its name. So we'll give our vote to the board of directors for the Vermont School Board Association rather than to our superintendent. That's what I would suggest.
Okay, and we didn't do that last year, so.
No, you have a history of authorizing the superintendent, but that certainly is an option. You go with the board of directors or the individuals that are representing. And they're the ones who are probably the better informed to make this decision, but it's up to you.
So I would move to appoint the proxy.
I would second that.
Motion by Emily, seconded by Garrett. Discussion?
Yeah, could you explain more, a little bit about that governing body, the School Board Association group?
Yep, it's in the packet. So we're saying that instead of sending our superintendent to this meeting, we will let the board of directors of the Vermont School Board Association vote for us by majority vote.
Just so you know, I'm going to be at this meeting anyway, because it's the annual conference that I'm going to be talking to you about in a little while, but that's certainly the will of the board.
Okay. There's no concern from you?
I would not share a concern. This is a board decision.
I have a concern, because I'm going to be at this meeting also, and if we are having our interests reflected in any kind of a vote that anything that BUUSD is voting on, with all due respect to the VSBA, do we not have a better representative if we have someone from the district being our representative?
Any other comments?
What generally do other districts do? Do we know?
I have no statistics about that. I think both can be
I have
true.
no idea either.
Emily?
This was, my intent was just to release Joanne from the meeting. Because these votes usually just go with the majority vote. I can't see a situation where we would have an interest above what this bit recommends.
Thank you.
You are gonna be there though?
Oh, I will be there then, absolutely. And Alice will be there too. And I'm hoping others will join us.
Any other discussion?
Well, I think if Joanne's gonna be there, she represents us and some of us may be there, so I will vote. I guess put it that way. I will vote on the issue. I will vote the motion that is being addressed right now.
All right, Ian?
Should we do a rock, paper, scissors on this, on deciding the motion that we're going to bring?
It's already a motion in a second.
Yeah, there is a motion and a second.
Just
I
complete the
will,
vote.
okay.
Just complete the vote.
Yep, all right.
All those in favor say aye.
Okay.
Opposed? I will be opposed as well. So that for Tina, that the record on that is myself, Alice, and Giuliano voted no.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, Emily.
You don't have to be sorry. I intend to be controversial.
Right, moving on to-
There's one more.
Yeah, yeah, you go
Moving
do
on to
VHI.
VHI. So the VHI proxy dental and health authorization. Traditionally, we have appointed the superintendent. Emily?
I could make a motion to appoint the proxy, the board of directors of the Vermont Education Health Initiative by majority vote to represent our interests at this meeting.
A second.
Motion by Emily, seconded by Jeff. Discussion? Public comment?
Is there public comment or is this training?
This is comment, this is public comment if you have a
No, I
comment.
was just getting confused.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
You're,
Alice?
This can be, the health insurance, the health costs can be very controversial. And knowing that, I think I know I will, tend to send a representative of the district so that they can speak about whatever VHI is talking about as far as, costs and production and products of health insurance for our staff and educational community.
Jackie?
Just barely doing negotiations, but isn't that more or less predetermined? I didn't think if there was like a shopping moment, even at that level. Am I wrong? This might be a Joanne question.
Say that again, Jackie.
There's not really like a shopping opportunity at whatever this dental and health vote is. It's kind of like a yes or no to my understanding of it. So Joanne could be like, we don't want to pay that. And it would basically be, then we're not covered. Okay. So otherwise, like, I agree. I wish we could, but in looking
Yeah,
into
well,
it.
The rates are the rates.
Yeah. And I am equally frustrated, I promise you. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like what, one insurance company that does business in Vermont?
Yeah. I have feelings about that. They're outside of this. Yeah. Feelings about that.
All right, any other comment? All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? The same three of us, Alice, myself, and Giuliano voted no. Thank you, Tina, sorry. All right, moving on to member selections, negotiation, and policy committees.
May I make a comment about that? In your packet in the briefing memo, it was actually not third representative for AFSCME. It is the third representative on the negotiating committee for the teachers and support staff. We have our two members who are representing the board, and that's Jackie Wheeler and Emily. And we need, for the teachers and support staff negotiations, we have Giuliano and also Jackie, and we need a third member. I had a good conversation with Pietro, who's the board's attorney that will be supporting you through the process, and he recommends 3 board members to participate.
So, and I had spoken about this, and I asked if she would be interested in doing it. And she did say that she was interested, unless you want to withdraw that.
I'm also interested
I don't have to take it if somebody else wants to, because I'm already on 2 committees, but I'm happy to if you need a third.
I am interested in that, but we don't have to decide now.
I'm also interested. I've done bargaining negotiations.
All right, so, I
Jeff,
would,
because you are a member of the NEA, I assume?
Yes, I am.
I would question, and I don't know, but I'm wondering whether that would be a conflict of interest. It would be something I would need to explore.
Okay.
If we could do it next month if you want, but.
Emily?
Can I make a motion to nominate Ian Campbell as our third representative to the negotiation committee?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion to appoint Ian Campbell to the negotiation committee, seconded by Jackie. Discussion? All right, public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. Okay, moving on to roundtable.
Did we miss
Wait a minute.
fuel oil?
Did we miss?
We have
Oh, yes,
policy
that's
committee.
right, policy committee. So Lindsay Wells did submit a letter, so is there a motion to appoint Lindsay Wells to the policy committee?
I would make a motion.
Motion by Garrett, seconded by Jackie. Discussion? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, no, she's had her hand up the entire time. All right, moving on to roundtable. We'll start with Jackie.
I have nothing. I am wildly unprepared. I did really enjoy the presentation tonight, so thank you to everyone. And I enjoyed the community involvement. That was here. I heard it on my phone, so thank you for that.
All right, Jeff?
One thing I can think of that is Andy speaking to the importance of the music programs and his perspective. I thought was very interesting, and I was on the lawn, my backyard the other night, and we heard them practicing. And I had a couple friends over there were like, "This is amazing! You get like literally a free concert whenever they practice and whenever there's a game." So that was really great to hear Andy talk and bring that stuff up. Yeah.
Catherine?
I agree with Jeff's comment wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice?
I'm thoroughly and continually impressed with Dr. Roy and her work. And certainly our staff has, I think, been inspired by her, and I'm very glad to see that.
Juliana?
I want to thank all the students who were here today. I think that was probably the most amount of students we've had in quite a long time speak about different items and from different buildings.
Garrett?
Yeah, I want to do a little bit of a plug. There's a new school year that after the school day is done, come on down to the Aldrich Library's Tea Lounge. It's our dedicated space in the library for grades 7 through 12. Only grades 7 through 12, unless you're browsing for a book, of course, are allowed in the teen lounge. We do a teen night on the first Friday of each month, which is a unique opportunity to hang out in the library after it's closed and have fun in downtown Barrie as a teenager. And then we do all sorts of other programs and events that pop up. There's a calendar in the teen room. I had something else I was gonna say. Oh, we also have a teen artist in residence, Pam Wilson, that will be in the teen lounge once a week, leading arts activities. She's a professional artist. A wonderful opportunity to explore that or just have a creative expression after a long day. So, and the library's open 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we're there until 6 o'clock every weekday. So come on down.
Emily?
I will just remind my fellow board members of the regional meeting, the Vermont School Board Association regional meeting. I think there's an email from me in your inbox. It's happening on September 30th. It's on Zoom. There's a little sample agenda in your email to look at. And for our board, I'm interested in communicating more with the Tech Center and understanding how we can support their efforts. So that's something for future agendas, probably next month.
Ian?
Today's the presentation was great. The community involvement was fantastic, and there is a round table over here. Sorry, I had to go for the low-hanging fruit there. But it really was just wonderful to hear the community outreach regarding the importance of the music practice and everything we can do.
Joanne?
Thank you. Just one more reminder, I really would love more board members to join us. Remember, we have an annual requirement that the board chair go through some training with the superintendent. It is a 2-day conference in Burlington this time, not in Killington or Lake Maury. Forget the hotel that it's going to be at.
DoubleTree.
Thank you. It's going to be October 28th and 29th. Alice and I are both registered, and if any of you can make it, please let me or Tina know, and we're more than happy to set you up. You can either spend the night or just come up for the day, or 2 days. It's up to you. I really do think it's worth it. There's a special workshop on conflict. I think you will all agree we deal with conflict on a regular basis, and there's a skill in being able to hear people while you're in the middle of conflict. So I think it'll be, they have other speakers. It'll be an interesting 2 days. You will receive the superintendent's goals next month, and I would recommend that the board consider developing goals as well. I appreciated you mentioning that tonight, Emily. I think if I may suggest, I think some of the topic areas are in the purview of the board's responsibility. Policy is one, finance is another. Another one would be facilities, and another one would be potentially negotiations. Or you could develop a goal on, what's the one I'm missing? Finance, facilities, policy. That would be the other one. And so setting some reasonable goals, expectations, and adding community engagement to that, I think would be important. So I can send you some materials ahead of time to prompt your thinking, but I think having goals that coordinate with one another, I think it's time for us to take that step.
All right. With that, next meeting is October 6th, right here at Spalding High School Library. And do you have a date of the forum?
The date of the forum.
For the special education committee?
Oh, yes, it was up on the board.
22nd, thank you.
Wednesday.
Thank you. Just wanted to repeat that. All right.
5:30 to 7.
I'm sorry?
5:37.
Oh.
Repeating the time.
Oh, okay. All right. With that, we do have an executive session under Personnel VSA 313A1, which is, don't have a number after that. It's just other permissible contracts. Is that what it is? Okay. Under contracts. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Motion by Alice, seconded by Jackie. Discussion? All those, you know what, to include the superintendent as well.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it is currently 8:18 and we're going into executive session. All right, it is currently 8:37 p.m. Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Motion by Jackie, seconded by Alice. Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Garrett, seconded by Jackie. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned at.
Thank you.
Good evening.
No.
8:37.
Chris, you can't escape. Turn off the red button at the top.
Yes,
Stop
recording.
recording. And then stop